Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Student Art Podcast. I'm your host, Ross Baxter, and today is episode 71 of the series. Today, I kind of wanted to do a different kind of, a different take on the podcast. So every kind of once in a while, I like to kind of do a kind of reality check with everything in terms of going over the reason why we do art in the first place, but most importantly, how to actually make it become a career. And actually, like, the main thing is mindset. And the reason why I wanted to do this was, so my whole life doing sport growing up, etc., my idol was a guy called Kobe Bryant. And unfortunately, obviously in the weekend, the man passed away. To me, he was the greatest basketball player ever, alongside Michael Jordan. And the man was just on a whole other level. And it was just, how can I say it? It was just, the guy did it all. And the guy's mindset was just on a whole other level that was just unmatched. And also, growing up watching basketball, growing up always being surrounded by sport in my family, etc. And my dad would always say to me, Ross, no matter what, you don't ever give up. And by God, did I always take that to heart. And when you have someone who's had such a big effect on your life pass away, it kind of makes you step back and really think about life and your family around you, etc. And most importantly, it makes you really think about just life as a whole and why you've got to fulfill it. And I understand that some people don't like listening to certain talks, etc., where it comes to certain speeches or whatnot. But to me, it's always been about just being 100% honest with yourself and really understanding that life is like an amazing opportunity for you to make the most of it, no matter what happens. And I've always wanted to help people. I've always wanted to do art. I've loved art for years. I've been doing art for, I don't know, nine years now, maybe almost going on to 10 years. But it was, like I said, sport was always the thing for me, and sport was the thing that kind of brought the mindset out of me, or not out of me, sorry. It gave me that right mindset, but it was Kobe Bryant that set the foundations for me to really push the work ethic, push the passion, and really strive to achieve and make the most of my life. Because there's so many people I've seen growing up who always look back or hear them speak and they're like, you know what, I wish I did that. I wish I could have given that a go. And I've always made sure to live life with no regrets. I never kind of, I've always done it the way that I wanted to do it. And that was the thing that Kobe Bryant always did. Like, that man literally never quit. He was literally just a 5-time World NBA Championship, MVP, gold medalist at the Olympics, you name it. The guy won it all, an Oscar-winning achiever, just incredible human being, and what he was able to accomplish throughout his 20 years as a Laker for the NBA, for the basketball. And it was just awesome every time. Like, we all have our idols, whether it's especially for artists. Like, we all have our people that we look up to, and the people that we get passionate about. But that's the thing. It's like it's your connection with with the craft that you're doing, and like, how badly do you truly want it. And this guy, the way he describes his, so he's called his mentality is called the Mamba mentality. His nickname has always been the Black Mamba. Because he was just that killer snake that would just, no matter what, he would not let anything get in his way, and he would just constantly keep pushing, keep figuring out how to get ahead. And his pillars were passion, being obsessive, being relentless, resilient, and most importantly, being fearless. And as he developed his school in America, teaching people the right mindset, also going over to China and talking to people in China and explaining his whole journey and bringing the world of basketball throughout the world and growing the world of basketball. and most importantly, building a great connection with so many people who love the guy. And that's the thing, it's like, just because we all love art, obviously we have so many other things that we enjoy and so many people we learn from. And at the end of the day, I've always made sure to surround myself by the right people, or listen to the right people, and strive to be the best person I can possibly be. And talking to people, listening to people, supporting people is the thing that I've always wanted to do. And at the end of the day, like, podcast numbers can grow no matter what. Like, obviously, social media, people have such a sort of value on certain numbers and that, but at the end of the day, the main priority for my podcast is simply just to help people. That's literally all I've ever cared about. Obviously, I've always wanted to build Hogwarts. It'd be great to build a school in Scotland, teaching people and just spreading the word of the world. Can't even speak, the word of 3D around, and 2D and art, just gathering artists together. And like, that's the beauty of it, and that's the reason why I do art, because I just love it. And like Kobe says, he's obsessing over every single thing. So all the details that encompasses a great candidate for basketball applies to being a great candidate as an artist. All these things that you do on a daily basis, the habits you do, the people you talk to, the way you approach your work, the way you adapt to change, the way you evolve, the way you accept that you're always growing, you're always going to that next level, and most importantly, you're just having such a fun time making it. And like, podcasts, like, I could do podcasts for ages and ages because I simply love doing it. And like, that's the thing, like, lots of people think things have to be based around where they come from, etc., or their financials and stuff, but anything you can you want, you can achieve. And it's realizing that you can be anyone that you want to be. It's just down to giving it the time that it deserves, and really understanding that it's a process. It takes time, it takes commitment, it takes appreciation for the fundamentals and mastering the fundamentals. And that's the thing that was really great as well. What Jay said in the last podcast was, he was talking about a musician who for many years would play an hour every single morning of the guitar, etc., mastering how to play music, in terms of like mastering the fundamentals, how to do the basics every single day for years. And it was that thing that Kobe did through his footwork, through the way he threw the ball, the way he observed, and most importantly, the way he analysed others, constantly figuring out who was better. He always went to, as he described it, Goat Mountain, so the greatest players of all time, and who were all his idols, etc. So he'd be talking to Michael Jordan, who was like almost like a brother to him. He would be talking to Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, all these incredible basketball players, to figure out how to up his level to the next game to win the NBA titles. And that's what we guys have to do as artists. Obviously, like, if you're like everyone, how can I say it? Like, you don't have to obviously be the greatest person of all time. That's okay. You could be the greatest person of your that you can be in terms of your individuality. Like, be the greatest version of yourself. Constantly strive to achieve. Obviously, accolades and awards, it's nice getting appreciated, etc., but the thing that you should be focusing on the most is yourself, being the best person that you can be, being fulfilled, etc., achieving what you want to do. Do you want to work on, I don't know, do you love cars? Do you like Fast and Furious? Do you love racing movies? Do you love dancing? Do you love drawing in concept art, etc., designing things, silhouettes, shapes, forms, you name it, all these amazing things? Whatever it is, focus on it non-stop and be relentless, going after it every day non-stop, because that was the thing. So obviously none of us, like, people always say, oh, that person's so talented, but no, these people worked. Obviously, sometimes maybe you might be blessed, whether it's maybe in sport, like maybe you have a height advantage, maybe certain things are that you're born with might give you a wee bit of an edge. But the main thing that's going to make you separate from everyone else is you, and you putting in the time, putting in the craft. Kobe Bryant, he was a good jumper, but he wasn't a great jumper. This is what one of the main talks that he did, and he was describing himself. At the time, he wasn't the best shooter, but he kept working on his shot, and he became literally I personally think the best scorer in history in the NBA. And Also, like all these things that he would break down, from being able to palm the ball, so having the grip advantage. That's what Michael Jordan was most famous for, was his ability to hold the ball and not let it fall out of his hands just by literally palming the entire ball, which is an incredible gift to have, because people don't realise that having a grip so strong in basketball will go such a long way. And the things that Kobe realised, though, was the things that he had to focus on, though, to get that edge, was his skills and his angles to how he approached things. And that also applies to your artwork. It's like figuring out how to get to that next step, that next level. So today we had an incredible live stream. It was great seeing everyone joining in the live stream. We had really good numbers today on the stream, so thank you everyone who's stopping by. It was awesome to see. So at the moment I'm working on a submarine project in Maya, a massive kind of environment where I'm actually merging three worlds or three environments together. And the main thing I want to bring that ties all this together that I'm discussing here is, when I'm making this environment, like, I'm not just thinking about making just a pretty image. Like, obviously you've got to be passionate about your work and it's important, but you want to up the game. And one of the greatest things I ever learned from Kobe is that if you know how to do the thing you're already doing in terms of the project, that means it's not the project for you. You need to go out your comfort zone, push the limits to a whole other level to really set yourself apart, and most importantly, bring yourself to another level of curiosity that you reach, that you've never reached before. And that's when you know you've made a massive improvement, because once you get yourself out of your comfort zone, that's where the big steps take place. Like, this is the thing, like, I understand that it's great to have a passion for something, but once you bring in an element, so say if you're an environment artist and you're listening right now, if you tried something to do with characters, that would then escalate and not escalate, that will evolve your environment artwork to a whole other level, because then that means you can start making sculptures, etc., or sculpting pieces of work into your environment work. So for example, I have a massive passion for innate artwork. Therefore, say if I wanted to go make a staircase, instead of just making a typical staircase, I could then sculpt animals onto it, sculpt ornate Baroque furniture carvings into it to make it come to a whole other level. And then that allows me then to dive deep into texturing on a whole other level, really trying to think about how the materials react, etc. All these things come together when you start branching into other areas rather than just being closed in on the same thing all the time. And that's the best thing that you can do as an artist. And when it comes to obviously evolving your artwork to the next level, for example, when I'm working on my submarine project, I'm figuring out, right, how does this thing work? Like, there's all these questions that you have to start asking, such as, like, how are submarines made? Who's making them? What's the theme? How old is it? Because of how old it is, how's the wear and tear going to look, etc. What's its function? Is it for aircraft carrier protection? Is it for a blockade running or a ballistic missile submarine? All these different questions. And then once again, going back to the beauty of texturing, the deeper the submarine submerges, like, how does the material react, etc., to the pressure? Because the deeper things go, the more effect that it has, and that's why submarines have certain limits that they can go down to. And it's down to that research that you dive into as an artist that really opens up your creativity and your understanding of materials, your understanding of not only how something actually works, but it lets you carry that information that you've learned onto other designs and other projects, and makes you become more of an actual artist rather than just a polygon maker. Like, there's nothing wrong with just being able to recreate a concept, but if you really want to evolve as a person, evolve as an artist, that ability to truly understand design, understand function, giving things reason. For example, how things, when it comes to the making of a submarine, how does it get manufactured? So where does all the rivets go? Where does all the bolts go? How is it casted a particular way in terms of the metal? Is it there's all these different types of questions that you then can start learning from. And that's the thing. So, like, watching documentaries, so everyone's heard of How's It's Made, how it was made, or How's It's Made. It was a great show. Everyone listening for. I don't think it's still on, but it's still on, like, Dave channels, etc. And that was an awesome show. Like, all these things such as Scrap Heap Challenge, Dragon's Den, The Apprentice. There's so many TV shows that you can learn from, and documentaries such as David Attenborough, to really bring your artwork to a whole other level. Because the same thing about David Attenborough is the fact that we literally don't know 90% of the ocean and all the animals that live beneath, or the fish, etc., you name it, everything living beneath, because there's so many different things out there, especially when it comes to colour, like the beauty of animals. And that's why when I'm sculpting in ZBrush, I don't like to always just make the cliche animal. Obviously, if I've never tackled something, then I'll do it. For example, I was I'm working on a dog sculpt at the moment, and I absolutely love it. I love sculpting, and I love dogs. But I was realising, right, you know what, a cassowary is something completely unique. It has a really amazing, beautiful neck with such variation of colour, and then the crest on top of its head is very unique, and it has a purpose that serves for the cassowary, which is incredible. And I was able to then dive deep into the research of their life in Australia, etc., and how things have changed, and the reason why their body has evolved over time through evolution, etc. And it's these things that really just make things just become a whole kind of, how can I say it, just a more complete artwork, or art piece, shall I say. And like, that's the thing. So when I'm talking about Kobe Bryant, he was always breaking things down, thinking about things, asking himself, why am I doing this? Is there a reason for it? And most importantly, is it the right thing to do? Like, that's always the hard thing about being an artist, especially with all the things that are online these days, with all the materials, etc. There's so many tutorials out there, and it's so hard to keep up with who's giving the right information, etc. Like for example, I love doing a podcast, and it's great that people enjoy the podcast. It's great that people tune into the podcast. But the podcast can only be beneficial if you then apply the things that the guests that I talk to bring up. Because at the end of the day, doing a podcast becomes pointless, or from your side of things, in terms of you're watching a podcast and if you're just listening in but not actually applying it, it's a whole other ball game. Like, that's the thing. Like, so many people, I hear from artists getting sent messages saying, "Oh, I'm not improving. I've watched all this. I've watched that." But then ask yourself, how much work have you actually done? Like, have you been putting in the time? I remember when I was in university, like, I had literally no social life, and that was the reason I didn't want to have a social life when I was in university, because the one phrase, like I said earlier, is the one thing I've always lived by. It's like, I hate to say what if. Like, I don't want to be like, you know what, I wish I worked harder, I wish I did this better. Obviously, you learn from your mistakes, and that's great, and that's noble. That's not a problem at all. It's completely understandable. It's the only way you get to grow. But when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, it's down to you to put in the work. Be committed. Be passionate. Ask people questions. Figure out the best people to ask questions. Surround yourself constantly by people better than you. Because at the end of the day, it's great and all. Like, people, like a lot of people, I see messages, people saying, "Oh, that they're the best in their class," etc. If you're the best in your class, then that means you have to start upping your game, because that means you have to start surrounding yourself by better people. Because at the end of the day, it's not the people in your class that's the people that's fighting against jobs, etc. It's the people who are already, like, people already in the industry, etc. Because there's people who are moving from studio to studio, and maybe they've already had many years of experience. Then it's down to figure out, right, how do I get that edge? And you have to then figure out the steps that give you an advantage. And the best thing I would ever say, and this is the thing that I believe, because it's always worked for me, and it's patience and giving your full effort to one piece. Some people say range is great, then I can understand, but personally, the one thing that doesn't fail is quality. If you can put your time into one piece and literally non-stop, doesn't matter if it takes you even a year. If it takes you 2 years, then so be it. Is it the greatest piece that you've ever done? Did you learn so much in that 2 years? Of course you did. Therefore, it's going to be the best piece that you've ever created. There was one great guest who came on the podcast, Alex. And when Alex came on the podcast, he was talking about his making of the Last of Us character. And he spent months working on this character, absolutely months, the same as me working on the train. And it was the best piece of the character that I've ever seen, like, in terms of like someone making it. It was so awesome. It was so just well created. Everything was thoroughly thought through. When he was doing his breakdown on ArtStation, everything just came together as one. It was incredible. From the hair, the hair planes, etc., to the way he presented his thumbnails, to the description, everything was thoroughly broken down. And once again, going back to all these great athletes and all these people worldwide who are successful, they think about it, literally the entire thing, and they don't rush it. Obviously, people always ask, right, how do you become successful? And then they forget that all these people have been putting in the work, putting in the hours non-stop, day in and day out. And there was one person, there's been quite a few people, people who were asking me, like, Ross, how do you have the time to do podcasts while you're working, while you're doing art, etc., and getting on with your other stuff? At the end of the day, things are a choice. It is down to you to do the work. If you want to do something as a career, etc. So I've always wanted to do teaching, etc., and podcasts, and raising the bar in that kind of area, and most importantly, learning. And the biggest thing I've always realized, because I'm nowhere near, obviously, I'm confident with my artwork. I don't put myself down, but I understand the truth. I know there's so many people out there better than me. Therefore, I surround myself all the time by people who are better than me. And when I'm doing podcasts, I realize that the best thing for a successful podcast is bringing on the best people that I can bring on, and people with the stories that can help you guys from all levels. Because stories at the end of the day is the thing that people learn from the most, I feel, because it helps people relate. For example, like I said, a lot of people worldwide are currently mourning with the death of Kobe Bryant, and his death, his life will never be forgotten. He was literally just a legend. And if you've never even heard of him, just trust me, watch a motivational video about him, and you'll learn more in that 10 minutes of watching one video than you've probably learned your whole life. And it'll give you a reality check to yourself, because you'll start to realize, you know what, you can do it too. Because that's the thing, it's like, you literally, people say, oh, this is all cringy and stuff, people watching motivational stuff, talking this and that. I'm like, no, who cares? At the end of the day, your life is your chance to make the most of it. Do you want to travel? Do you want to explore the world? Do you want to try different things that have never been done before? Then do it. It's literally just, there's only two words that are stopping you. It's always the thing between yes and no. You're either going to do it or you're not. There's no kind of 50% or 75%. I was it's okay. I'll make an excuse. I had a sore hand that day or whatever. It's simply down to, you either want it or you don't, and you make the most of it. And that was the thing. It's like, at the end of the day, everything's all about just being committed and having a blast doing what you're doing. So challenging yourself is so important. And like I always say, having fun, because you've got to enjoy it and realize, so this is the thing, so obviously you guys are all tuning in, listening to the podcast, etc. I believe in every single one of you, and I don't even know you. And that's 100%, that's me just being 100% honest with you. I believe in every single one who's listening to this podcast right now. I know you guys can do it. I can do it, and I know you can do it. All my friends that have made it in art, they've done it because they've been committed. And I know everyone who wants to make this a career can make this a career. It's just down to going yes, I can do it. And you'll do it, trust me. Everyone who's listening right now, if you want to get into AAA, if you want to get into VFX, whatever it is, teaching, mentoring, you name it, all these great things, it's just by saying, right, I'm going to do it, and then that's it. It's simple as that. People are like, oh no, there's so many things else to it. No, there's not. It's simply, you're either going to do it or you're not. And like I said, I believe in every single one of these. And the thing about today's live stream, it was really great. So if you guys want to go tune in, twitch.tv/Ross Baxter. There was a bunch of great people on talking about environment art, and I was breaking down my submarine, and we were working together, talking about different things, sharing links, and everyone was asking questions. And that's the thing that I've always wanted this podcast to be for you. I want this podcast to be the thing that when you're nervous or when you're shy and you don't know who to go to when it comes to asking questions, I want this podcast to be the podcast for you, that you're like, you know what, I may be a bit nervous for now, but I can go ask Ross this question in the comments or whatever on Twitch, and I'll do my best to answer it. Sometimes I can't answer. Obviously, there's certain questions that can't be answered, but for the majority of the questions, like 99% of the time, I'll do my best to help you out. And that's the thing about this whole kind of journey that we all go through. And it's about helping each other, working together, figuring out how to invest. Like, that's another thing, investing. So I've mentioned this in the 500 seconds for the last 2 podcasts. So people always ask about what should we invest in, whether it's tools, etc. So obviously the obvious answer is that you have to invest in yourselves. And you have to then figure out, right, what do I need to invest in? So time management, how do I invest quality time? So for example, there's no such thing as a day of the week. There's no such thing as a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. No. To me, there's always just been, right, today's the day that I'm getting work done. There's no, literally for years, ever since I made a promise in my family, ever since secondary school, I was like, you know what, there's no such thing as a weekend. There's always a day which is an opportunity for you to be successful and to make the most of it and to get a step closer to your goal. Because like in that day, it's like a lot of this became easy and natural for me, because when I was in secondary school, I was always in graphic communication every single lunchtime from second year to 6 years, for 4 years straight, every day, and after school for an hour and a half to 2 hours, I would always be doing art. And when I was playing basketball, I was always arriving at school at 6 a.m. before school started at 8:45. And like that was a thing. It was just a choice. Like, we all have choices, and it's just down to making the right choices. Obviously, we all make mistakes. It's okay. I said this already, but it's a learning curve, and it's the way we grow as people. So when it comes to investing, right, so how can I invest my time? How can I invest my money? If you have no money right now, what can you do to get an advantage? There's so many free things out there. If you have access to internet, obviously if you're listening to this podcast, you do, and there's so many tools out there. Like, literally, you don't need to pay for anything to become the best at art, to get into the industry. You don't need to. Like, obviously, you learn from videos, etc., in regards to trends, etc. But to be the best artist, all you've got to do is keep working. So if you want to get better at 3D, all you do, get software and keep practicing 3D. That's all it is. People are like, oh, there's so many other things. There's not. It's simply you just have to keep on working on it. Keep on figuring out, right, all these different buttons. Like, that's the thing, experimenting, diving into different areas that you've never thought you could maybe explore. Trying different tools out, figuring things out, breaking the tools. Going into, say, if you love Blender, going into Blender. Try different buttons out. Push the limits of the software. Figure out how to get to that next level. If you don't know if you have a really poor foundation, master foundation. Appreciate the basics, because if you can spend a solid amount of years learning the basics and truly understanding it, you'll go so far. Because like Feng Su, one of the best artists in the industry, is a master of the basics. John Howe, Alan Lee, the incredible artists that made Lord of the Rings come to life, they were so good at the basics. They're in their talk about the documentary of the making of Smaug and the production of The Hobbit, etc. You just saw their entire thought process and how they analyse shapes, how they analyse each sort of location for the setting of Middle Earth. All these things were brought together through their appreciation of understanding the basics. And it's the same thing for anything you design, whether you're a character artist, a concept artist, you name it, whatever it is, you can do it. And it's just down to giving the time, investing into understanding the basics. Some people don't like learning the basics, like certain shapes, like people like to go straight to detail, but detail is the basics, and it's the thing I like to say a lot of the podcasts, and I always like to repeat a lot of things, because until it clicks, like I don't know when things are going to click when people are tuning in. I just want people to do well. That's all I care about. Like, I want you guys to do well, and I hope like the podcast has been really helpful for you guys. And I'm just trying to see what else I've wanted to discuss, because I think that's pretty much it. Because today was just, ever since I heard the news about Kobe Bryant, I really wanted to kind of make a video about the mindset, because at the day it's the mindset that separates you from everyone else. And like, I may not be the best artist in the world, but I know for a fact that I have no regrets. Like I know for a fact that I know I can achieve whatever I want in life. So if I want to go and become the best teacher I can, then what's that mean? That means I have to be fully committed. If I want to become better on YouTube, that means I need to be getting better thumbnails, better videos, better topics, reaching out to different people. How do I approach social media? So when it comes to tweeting, how do I word it? How do I spread the word of the podcast? Like, there's so many things that you then have to start diving into, and that's the same for you guys as artists. Like, learn to expand and just have fun. Like, having fun is all that matters. You have a blast, make the most of it, enjoy it. And thank you so much for everyone who's been on this journey with me so far. We've just passed 70, like I said, 70 episodes of the Student Art Podcast. I'm incredibly grateful for everyone who's been on this journey with me. And like I said, so many podcasts to come. Podcasts literally every single day, probably for the next week and a half or whatever, or 2 weeks at least. So lots of guests. The next guest is an incredible character artist, and we're going to be talking about the making of Goku and Dragon Ball Z, and then also the designing of characters and the understanding of hair, etc., and how to make hair in 3D. And we'll talk about design, etc., you name it. And then we've also got the Rookies Award coming on, and we've got another character artist, a creature artist, an environment artist, a junior environment artist, a VFX artist, you name it. We've got podcasts non-stop. So thanks once again. Drop a like if you enjoyed today's video. Leave a comment. The one thing it would be great to see, I'd start seeing more comments in the chat. It'd be great to see, like, who's your guys' idol? Who do you guys look up to? Have you guys got a favorite artist? Write it down in the comments below. It'd be awesome to see who people's idols are. Mine's always been John Howe and Mark Lee, etc. Incredible artists. But thanks once again to everyone who's been tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy the podcast to come. Thank you, and bye for now.